Hi, so just continuing from where we left off. So white had played b3, and as we discussed already, it was basically to prevent this knight from coming here. And Kasparov here played knight to c6, which again, as we said just at the end of the last video, was necessary because in this position here, if black had played something like king h8, then white could push d5, and this knight would have to go back to b7, which is a kind of an awkward square for the knight. So Kasparov played knight to c6, and then we see d5 anyway, so it's kind of like the computer Deep Blue is blocking the position. We can see that the center is now blocked. So any activity, any attacking attempts are going to occur on the wings. So obviously things like space are going to be quite important there. And the other factor is we see this kind of knight maneuver now, which kind of looks a bit odd and against opening principle, because obviously we generally state we need to develop pieces and not move our own pieces. But we have to remember that white is also not moving pieces and it's rather moving pawns, so it's not really such a problem. So the rules, if one side is playing one way, then it means that the rule is dependent on how the other player plays as well. That's I think that's probably the best way of explaining it. So d5, knight to e7. So the idea is this knight's just going to get rerouted, and now we see bishop to e3, and then knight to g6. Kasparov, in general, his idea now is basically to try and trade pieces because he has a spatial disadvantage. So by trading pieces, it makes white's attack weaker. So we see queen to d2, so white's development's now complete, and then knight to h7, and that's the idea of this what we call sometimes called a drunken knight move. So we can see now that the queen obviously has much more access now, so on this diagonal, and Kasparov is looking to play knight, exchange a pair of knights for white's knight. Now we see a4. In a lot of games, the Roy Lopez games, there are a lot of positions where we see a4 or a3, a4 as an alternative route for the bishop, and also where white likes to attack. So in a lot of variations, white has pressure on the sort of extreme left flank sides of the chessboard, and actually it's quite notorious in this game as well. So we see a4, and then Kasparov trading a piece, so queen to e2, and then again looking a bit strange, just moving the queen back and forth. Obviously Kasparov had to capture it back, but it's just the best place for the queen at the moment, so not necessarily a bad move, just having it be like a waste move, just moving the queen back. Now we see b3, so white's obviously confident and has strength on the left side of the board, which is why he's attacking there, which makes sense. So Kasparov, not wanting to block the position just yet, plays queen to c7. Now we see rook to c1, rook e c1, and now we see this move c4. So already we can kind of see just qualitatively that this bishop's now been opened. Obviously we have a closed position apart from the a file, but that can be opened quite easily for white. This bishop now has good possibilities in this diagonal. So it seems that white has the initiative here. Okay, so rook a3. White is preparing to double rooks on the a file. Okay, rook e c8, and then rook c a1, queen to d8. So the rook does a better job of being on this file than the queen. And now this is an interesting position. Again, white has a lot of options, and part of the interest of this whole game really is to see how modern computers now play in these positions, and you can look at multiple lines when you analyse games. I think possibly the top candidate move, I'm not 100% sure, I have to check, was just a takes, so white could already sort of capture and open up this file. So that's kind of like White's way breaking through here. F4 is a very ambitious move. It's a very aggressive move. The idea is to undermine White's central control, Black's central control. So obviously this pawn will then become a pass pawn. But obviously you can see it's opening up the king's side safety a little bit. It's not a bad move at all. It's just more of a humanistic move than a materialistic move. And I think it was kind of these moves that Kasparov at the time was really concerned about. But I think really we prove really now with computers that the more of the true nature of chess, now we have such powerful engines, you know, their strategical weaknesses are not such a problem now because of so they can analyse so deeply into the position. So we see F4. Okay, and the knight's coming in, so we just bring the knight back into the game. So yes, so as we discussed, we see F takes. Now we see we've got this open F file, and then D takes E5. So we can now see that White has this pass pawn that Black needs to deal with. A bit like we see later in the game with Black's idea. We can now see that obviously this pawn can now move forward. We can get pieces coming in here. So yeah, so all the initiative really is from White. So queen to F1, and then the knight coming to E8. So the idea is this knight's going to try and land on D6, but as we would discuss, this bishop, you know, has potential attacking lines here. So we see queen to F2, just reinforcing that bishop, and then the knight D6. So yeah, it's rather passive for Black. Bishop to B6, just attacking the queens. The queens have to move, and then rook to A2, and then we see bishop to E7. I think the idea of this move was just to basically bring the bishop down to H4, which kind of ties White's pieces down, because obviously this knight can't move. If the queen moves, the knight gets captured. And we can see in general that White's, particularly on the dark squares, just a little bit weaker, especially once this bishop, or if this bishop gets traded off, which I think it does in this game. So bishop to C5. So again, we're just attacking the blockading piece. The knight's the best piece for blockading this pawn. You see bishop to F8, which is kind of like an admission of defeat, because obviously this bishop's like, well, it's not really doing very much, and this is not going to work now because of just bishop takes. So, and we can see actually White is coming in here and attacking. So it'd be interesting to look at that on the computer just to see here just what would happen if Black had played bishop to H4, just to prevent this knight coming in. We can see after this bishop retreat, we see the knight now coming to F5, so we've obviously got two attackers on the knight. White wants to capture with the knight, so Kasparov captured with the bishop, and now pawn takes. So F6, so just blocking that pawn from moving forward. Bishop takes, so now we see we've got the bishop on this square. So yes, White's now weaker on the dark squares, significantly. Only the queen, well, and the rooks to some extent can control the dark squares, but it's not as good as a bishop for attacking. The bishop's going to be better at that, and Black also has the queen as well. So really, this was the point where Kasparov didn't expect what happened. All these moves are very good, actually. I mean, if you analyze them. But it was rather the way that it was played that was unexpected. You know, so it wasn't that the moves were any stronger; they were just different. So we see A takes, B takes. Now we see we've got this open file.